Welcome and thank you for tuning in. This is the account with the report for day 431 of the war in Ukraine. Today was a rather slow news day. I have one article I want to point out, and I also have one extra breaking news segment that will probably be updated over the next days. All other updates are grouped into the usual situation inside Ukraine, the occupied territories, Russia and Belarus, and the international developments. Before we start the news though, the flashpoints along the front. Bakhmut. Russia has continued to intensify attacks inside Bakhmut with the goal to capture the remaining western part. Ukrainian defenders are putting up a stiff resistance, managing to repel most attacks. Outside Bakhmut, Russia has renewed assaults on Ivanivske and Predetchine, however, had no success so far. Avdiivka. Pro-Russian channels reported today that Russia had to retreat from several positions south of Avdiivka due to pinpoint artillery strikes by Ukrainian forces. Pervomaiske continues to be fiercely contested, with Russia focusing its attacks on the settlement. And now for the article I wanted to point out, titled, "Each one of us is a weapons baron. How Ukrainian volunteers have been buying up armored vehicles across the UK." Just like volunteers have bought Bayraktar attack UAVs, a satellite, a vast number of pickup trucks, and drones using donations, others have started to set their sights on the UK armored vehicles market last year and launched a campaign to take out everything they could use to fight the Russians. Especially old armored personnel carriers are being auctioned off to anyone who wants them. Even though the weapons are disabled, the heavy tracked vehicles are still in demand among locals. These expensive toys are used by businesses or end up in private collections. Now, Ukrainian volunteers have started to search for working armored vehicles, buy them from private owners, and bring them to Ukraine. I recommend checking out this article. And to start the news segment, the breaking news regarding Pavlohrad. During the recording of the report, breaking news were reported from Pavlohrad, Dnipropetrovsk Oblast. A massive explosion with several cook-offs occurred in the area near the railway station. Russian state media reported a warehouse with ammunition, fuel and lubricants, where the Ukrainian military was preparing for a counteroffensive, was hit. Pavlohrad Mayor Anatoly Vershina reported that explosions were heard in the city and an air raid warning was issued. It is currently unknown what exactly was hit, however it was quickly pointed out that the Pavlohrad chemical plant is located in the direction of the explosion. The Pavlohrad chemical plant produces industrial explosives, varnish, paints, glues, toothpastes and consumer goods. The plant was also dismantling Soviet RS-22 ICBMs and, in 2019, still stored 38 ballistic missiles containing more than 1,800 tons of rocket fuel. Due to a lack of funding, the disposal was put on hold. The location of the explosion in the video would support both the Ukrainian theory that the chemical plant was hit and the Russian theory that a warehouse near the train station was hit. The location of the chemical plant is marked in red here. The train station is marked in blue. The view from the video is roughly shown in yellow. We will have to wait for additional information tomorrow or over the next days. A look at all the minor updates out of Ukraine. Czech President Pavel has left a message on military vehicles while visiting Ukraine, urging Russians to go home. Ukraine and the Turkish company Baykar signed 3 new agreements for Ukrainian manufacturers during the International Aviation Exhibition Technofest 2023 at Istanbul's Ataturk Airport. General Valery Zaluzhnyi, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, has held a meeting with General Christopher Cavoli, NATO's Supreme Allied Commander Europe, to discuss possible battlefield scenarios and what Ukraine needs to undertake further actions. Russian troops attacked Kramatorsk in Donetsk Oblast with 5 missiles overnight, according to the regional governor Pavlo Kyrylenko. One of the missiles targeted a residential area of the city, and the rest hit an industrial area and the field outside. Russian news agency RIA Novosti, quoting the Russian Ministry of Defense, claimed that the attack on Kramatorsk destroyed a train loaded with 200 tons of ammunition. Ukraine will need financial backing from its Western partners next year, as the budget needs will remain high, the country's finance minister Serhiy Marchenko said before joining a meeting of EU finance ministers. According to sociological research, Victory Day on May 9th has faced dramatic changes in Ukraine. In 2010, it was one of the most important holidays, according to 58% of the population, and Victory Day was second only to New Year's Eve, Christmas, and Easter in popularity. By 2021, its popularity had halved, and only 30% considered it the most important holiday. In 2023, there is only 13% of supporters of this holiday, with fewer supporters only for Labor Day. Kirilo Budanov, head of the Defense Intelligence of Ukraine, during an interview with the American TV channel PBS, has voiced confidence that the Russian occupiers who committed war crimes in the war in Ukraine will be found and eliminated anywhere. Yurii Ihnat, spokesperson for the Air Force of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, stated on television that Russia has used recently manufactured missiles containing foreign parts in the latest missile attack, suggesting Russia is circumventing sanctions. He also stated that Ukraine is in urgent need of modern fighter jets to ensure its armed forces can successfully attack and defend. In a telephone conversation with his French counterpart Emmanuel Macron, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has informed him of the situation at the front lines and discussed additional defense assistance. Next up, the latest regarding the situation in the occupied territories. Natalia Humenyuk, head of the Press Center for Operational Command South, suggested that the fire at the oil depot in occupied Sevastopol is a preparation for the awaited counteroffensive. In its morning report, the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine stated that after the fire broke out at the oil depot in occupied Sevastopol, panic rumors have begun spreading in the city about the inability of Russian air defense to ensure the security of its own strategic facilities. Ukrainian Human Rights Commissioner Dmytro Lubinets has advised Ukrainians who currently live in Russian-occupied areas of Ukraine to make a decision to survive and take Russian passports. During the evening, Melitopol Mayor Ivan Fedorov reported explosions in the city of Berdyansk. Moving on to the news updates from Russia and Belarus. This article is from April 28th, but I was just made aware of it today. Using open sources, BBC Russia, together with Mediazona, established the names of 21,700 Russian soldiers who have been killed in the war in Ukraine. The media carried out a name-by-name count of the dead. Of those, at least 3,401 are members of Russia's elite forces, including intelligence officers, Russian National Guard, paratroopers, marines, and pilots. BBC and Mediazona say that according to the most conservative estimates, Russia may have lost about 43,400 people. At the same time, Russia's totally irretrievable losses, which include wounded, killed, or missing, may amount to 195,000. 14 months into the war, the number of Russian military casualties verified through open sources has long since surpassed the officially confirmed number of deaths of Soviet soldiers during the 9-year war in Afghanistan. Over 15,000 Soviet troops were killed in Afghanistan from 1979 until 1989, according to official records. A local governor said 4 civilians died as a result of what he called a Ukrainian shelling on the village of Zuzemka in Russia's Bryansk Oblast. Zuzemka, home to 8,600 people, is located some 21 kilometers east of the border with Ukraine. Additionally, Alexander Bogomaz, the governor of Bryansk Oblast of Russia, has claimed that a fire and partial destruction of a residential building in the village of Zuzemka was allegedly caused by bombardment from the armed forces of Ukraine. And to wrap up the news segment, the international developments. Czech President Petr Pavel, after his visit to Ukraine, said at a briefing in Prague that the Czech Republic, in cooperation with its partners, will look for ways to increase the supply of ammunition to Ukraine, which is necessary for the Ukrainian armed forces for a successful counteroffensive. Pavel also plans to discuss with MPs to recognize the deportation of the Crimean Tatar people in 1944 as an act of genocide. Germany has confirmed the delivery of the second Iris-T surface-to-air missile system to Ukraine in an update to its military aid list. In response to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's statement about how Hungary's behavior and its relations with Russia contravened its status as a NATO ally state, Hungary's Minister of Foreign Affairs stated the following. According to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, Hungary's behavior as a NATO member is inappropriate. Well, first, fortunately, he doesn't decide this. Second, the Hungarian people have already paid an extremely high price for this war. Third, many Hungarians, members of the Transcarpathian Hungarian community, have already died in this war. Fourth, if this statement means I respectfully thank the Hungarians for letting in and taking care of more than 1 million refugees from Ukraine, and I respectfully thank them for continuously sending aid, then you are welcome and can count on us in the future. Former German Chancellor Angela Merkel has advised that we should not narrow our minds too much when it comes to finding a solution to end Russia's war in Ukraine. And now for the intelligence report segment, starting with the UK Ministry of Defence. In recent months, Russian commanders have likely started punishing breaches in discipline by detaining the offending troops in zindans, which are improvised cells consisting of holes in the ground covered with a metal grill. Multiple recent reports from Russian personnel give similar accounts of being placed in zindans for misdemeanors, including drunkenness and attempting to terminate their contracts. In the early months of the war, many Russian commanders took a relatively light touch in enforcing discipline, allowing those who refused to soldier to quietly return home. Since autumn 2022, there have been multiple increasingly draconian initiatives to improve discipline in the force, especially since Chief of the General Staff Valery Gerasimov assumed command of the operation in January 2023. A look at the latest assessment by the Institute for the Study of War. Wagner Group financier Yevgeny Prigozhin threatened to withdraw Wagner forces from Bakhmut if the Russian military command fails to provide more ammunition to the Wagner mercenaries. Prigozhin also continued his efforts to convince the Kremlin to go over to the defensive in eastern Ukraine. Prigozhin offered a position as first deputy commander of Wagner forces to former Russian Deputy Defense Minister for Logistics, Colonel General Mikhail Mizintsev, who was reportedly dismissed from his position on April 27th. Ukrainian forces likely attacked an oil storage facility in Sevastopol, reportedly with a wave of Mugin 5 UAVs on April 29th. And to wrap up the report, the evening update by the General Staff of Ukraine. The enemy continues to focus its main efforts on conducting offensive actions in the Bakhmut, Avdiivka and Marinka directions. During the day, units of the Defense Forces of Ukraine repelled more than 20 enemy attacks on the specified areas of the front. Bakhmut and Marinka remain at the epicenter of hostilities. Our defenders are firmly holding the defense. In the Bakhmut direction, the enemy continues to conduct offensive actions. Fighting continues in the city of Bakhmut. In addition, during the day, the enemy conducted unsuccessful offensive actions in the direction of the settlement of Ivanivske. In the Avdiivka direction, the enemy carried out offensive actions in the area of Avdiivka and Pervomaiske settlements of the Donetsk region without success. In the Marinka direction, the enemy continues to attack the positions of the defense forces. Battles continue for Marinka. The local hospitals of the temporarily occupied Luhansk are finding it increasingly difficult to cope with the growing number of wounded. A group of medical workers, in particular surgeons, recently arrived in the city from the Moscow region to treat and rehabilitate Russian soldiers. The official purpose of the visit is to exchange experience and help medical institutions in Luhansk. Recently, irreversible losses from residents of Luhansk and its surroundings who were forcibly mobilized to the Russian army amount to about 70 people per day. In order to prevent possible manifestations of discontent among the population, ritual services are recommended to adjust the number of people present at funeral processions to 6 people. In addition, in this context, the so-called MDB insists precisely on cremation of the dead as opposed to burial. And that wraps up today's report. Should you be interested in the details of any articles I mentioned, you can find links to them in the description. If you enjoyed the report and found it informative, please consider sharing it with others and giving me a like. Thank you for tuning in and have a great day. You are listening to The Account. Slava Ukraini.